Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is in fact the Talamanca Review. And it's 3:19 p.m. on the 24th of November, 2024, 2424. And I'm joined by my friend and yours, Santo Cavallaro. Santo,
Hey,
how you doing?
Bruce, how you going? It's been a while since we spoke.
Yeah.
Uh, like this, I like speaking, just casually because you seem to be in a different space when there's nothing else happening. But you just said something which is interesting, 2424, because I was born 6 March 1956. And when you do that whole numerology thing, uh, it's very much driven around 639. I'm not making a big deal out of numerology, but 2424, born to a six, born to a 666. It was meant to be, Bruce. This is fate.
I'm
Something big is going to be revealed today.
I'm inclined to agree, Santo. So I'm just gonna let things be, and I'm going to let you take the conversation where you want to take it, and allow my what you call it, my responses to dictate the show, which I always enjoy because it brings out things that I might not otherwise have thought to talk about. So
Well, see, the thing is, we've
uh
had a
oh,
number of conversations.
uh oh,
We've had a number. What?
nothing. Go ahead. The thing is,
The thing is, Bruce, we've had a number of conversations, and it's you could say the foundations of what you've been saying forever and what I don't have, the language or the words sometimes to express, but I'm on the same page. It feels like sometimes you go around in circles because when these foundational principles of truth or whatever you want to call it, because you bring out words like heart, love, it's very difficult to put those foundational truths into a perspective that you can communicate without it becoming new agey, wishy-washy, or
yep,
lose context. So
yeah,
stitching it all together in a way that doesn't deliver something that is like, yep, I read that in a meme, or yep, love is all you need. The Beatles told me that when I was 6 years old, whatever.
yeah.
It's been able to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together so that at the end of a conversation, you feel like you've added one or two more pieces to this big puzzle.
Yep.
And much as I listen to a lot of other podcasters, and they do present one little piece. But what I find is sometimes they're putting a piece of a puzzle on a foundation that will never put the picture together.
Yeah.
In other words, their foundation is kind of correct. And this is what I'm finding, and you've alluded to, is that a lot of the truths that are coming out have an unbalanced perspective. So they could be seeing the whole thing of what the Zionist agenda is or what's going on in Israel. They've got all the eggs. It creates this kind of confusion for the audience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In other words, it can do, in a weird way, more harm than good, that
Yeah.
those that are looking for answers in the wrong places.
Yeah.
Because they listen to these people and they had a question. In other words, their conscience, or they're like, I don't like the killing that's going on there. But then they're given this perspective that makes them feel better about that issue in themselves,
Yeah.
but throws them into a pit of almost zealotry. Now, you've had, and sort of reading through The Devil and Me and your other material, a very sound analysis as well as personal experience.
Yeah.
And somehow I feel, because we can only come from our perspectives, All the rest of it is just information. So the fundamental principle that drives it forward is experience through co-creative efforts and expressions. And we do that based on what we've come from in the realm of co-creative experiences, efforts. But because a lot of those experience and efforts created many layers of trauma, it becomes an algorithm of saying, at an individual level, how much trauma do you have? Because we're being bombarded in a way with truths at the moment. But truths cannot be processed without the individual going within their own path of experience and resolving the traumas to clear the pathway to these new truths that are coming.
Yeah.
That is a huge, huge kind of job description that we've all got as individuals.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very difficult to almost engage with people that are asking questions, genuinely want to get to the bottom of something, but essentially what you're saying is you've got a lot of traumas blocking your pathway to clarity around this issue, so deal with them first. They don't want to hear that.
No. No.
Just like when somebody does that to me. I go, but you didn't answer my question. And you go, well, there's a reason for that. And then it becomes kind of negative from that person's perspective. You didn't help me. So what do? They run to the loudest speaker that says, I can help you. And it could be the Jew camp. It could be the there's a Jehovah Witness stand there waiting for the weak and vulnerable to ask exactly those questions.
Yeah.
Here's a brochure. It's got all the answers. And if they connect those dots, they've got you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do we be mature about this without going in circles? There's a question for you.
Well, I think I've been remarkably consistent about this question. I don't think it's possible to get the knots out of your consciousness without meditating. I think it is the one ingredient that is absolutely essential to the recipe. I mean, if you look at bread, you could probably do without salt. It would have a very different taste. You could do without leaven, and you could do a flatbread. But what can't you do without? You can't do without the flour. You have to have the flour. So a lot of times people get blocked by language. Like, I always give the example of that unbelievable review of Stardust Ranch I received a couple years ago. I don't even check the reviews on my books anymore. I mean, I think I'm up to about 60 on Light of Darkness, 400 and some on Stardust Ranch, and so on and so forth. But this guy writes this review and he says, wow, man, the first 3/4 of this book were amazing. And the first 3/4 of the book were all fear porn, as far as I'm concerned. But, I mean, these things really happen to John and Joyce, and they really are fearful. So, and then toward the end, I start to explain some stuff, the 20th century, how we had this giant leap forward, and introduce some other concepts of consciousness. And the guy writes in the review, first 3/4 was pretty good. Then the author got into some Eastern mysticism, and I threw the book in the garbage and didn't share it with anybody because I wanted to make sure no other Christians got infected. That's what you're up against, right? And you just look at it, and then so many of the teachers I've studied with, they say the same thing, that look, to really get out, you got to forget the world, because we don't ascend, or we don't cycle out of material existence collectively. So if you're attached to the collective, you're anchoring yourself. Now, some people are honest about that. The Tibetan Buddhists say that they're going to keep reincarnating until all sentient life is liberated. Well, what does that tell you? I mean, what are they saying? It like, people don't stop and think about what's being said there. they're pretty much telling you this is like a hell space, and they're on an evacuation mission. And so to really make any progress, you have to be a little bit selfish. Like, it's like the instructions on an airplane before you take off. If we have the need for the oxygen masks, put yours on before you put the oxygen mask on any dependents like your children. Because if you go unconscious, nobody's going to put the masks on the children. And that's kind of the reality we live in. It's just so far gone, and it's at a pitch of negativity now. And then we come to the Jewish question, and you have to think about it, because they're a powerful force in the world. And if they're right, everybody else is wrong. And you can't ignore that, because we're all of the religions, including Christianity and Islam, are all about getting out of here, ending the suffering and going to a better place. Call it heaven, call it whatever you want. Judaism, it does a U-turn and says, no, we're supposed to be here. We're supposed to be making this a heavenly place. And it's worth thinking about. It shouldn't be dismissed out of hand. But then you go to, well, how are they doing it? And then you see it's not good at all. Well, we're going to make this a heavenly place by lobotomizing all the human beings who can't make it a heavenly place themselves. We're going to put a chip in their brain, and we're going to finish this creative process that the Creator didn't finish. We're going to finish this beta human, and we're going to come out with a release candidate on the human being. And this is really the thinking in transhumanism now. And
Yeah.
for those of us in the camp that this is a place you come to realize yourself spiritually and then not come back, this is the darkest and most dire moment in the history of the human race, because the stuff they're contemplating now will lock us in here. There will be all that stuff you hear from the Gnostic perspective, which I think is a bit nonsensical, but worth going over nonetheless. That there was a hack in the reincarnation grid, and that which would make even all of these near-death experiences false, and that it's just an endless loop. We're being recycled down here. Ariel said the same thing in Interview with an Alien, which I captured in The Devil in Us. So this idea of an infinite loop of chaos and repetition and madness in the human experience, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And now we're at this point now where I think the Creator is going to step in, and I think that the Creator has to step in. Because when the fundamental rules of the game are changed to this level, where something like free will could be revoked by human invention, and that seems to be what's on the horizon, is the revoking of free will, then that breaks the original construction. And the Creator comes in, and I think the Creator's solution to everything is to reset the whole game, is, to reset the chessboard. And
Yeah. But that kind of becomes a bit biblical, kind of Noah's Ark kind of flood. I see that, but I also see a different flavour in what's happening today in this cycle. For example, you mentioned that Jack Cruz interview, that recent one, and I listened to that, and it kind of was
you see what
introduced some new concepts. Sorry.
You see, he tagged the thorium reactor, which I had just said on my podcast the night before.
Exactly. Everything's starting to piggyback.
Yeah,
everything's starting to piggyback.
The whole world, folks, you got to understand, there are no power problems on this planet. There are none. Yeah. Between the water engine, thorium reactors to power cities with no side effect, no radioactivity, no possible Chernobyls, no possible 3 Mile Islands. The reason we went to the uranium reactors is they wanted the plutonium for the bombs. And so, I mean, for the longest time, this human race has been run by a death cult. And sorry.
Yeah. See, but what I found interesting, Bruce, was that on the back of the Danny Jones or Danny podcast, because he'd done the Rick Rubin, and he's kind of saying the same thing, but he's introducing a little bit more each time. But this most recent interview, you could tell the guy interviewing him is like, hang on, there's all these amazing facts of the lies we've been told, and he says it really well because he's a smart dude. But at the front of his mind is, hang on, El Salvador. Why El Salvador? And why is El Salvador kind of going to be different or protected in this game? And I immediately thought of Libya at a much smaller scale when Gaddafi just slightly does a slightly different thing, or anyone or any country does anything. And he tried to explain Bukele's kind of different tactic. And I think, yeah, but still, with the weapons they have, a little country like El Salvador, why would it be special, right? So you kind of see that there's that aspect of it. Are you kidding yourself as an individual, a nation, a country, whatever? Because the global mafia is the global mafia and it controls the globe. But at an individual level too, you have to ask Jack Cruz, if you listen to that podcast, is going right out on a limb with some of these facts. So you immediately think, why hasn't he been taken out?
Excellent question, Santo. I've wondered and come up with no answer. Do you have one?
Well, I have a hypothesis because I feel they have the ability. It's a little bit like the metaphor you gave of the cake, and you need the ingredients, the flour, whatever the ingredients are. So I feel we're misdirecting ourselves in terms of understanding the ingredients. The ingredients aren't just the false history we've been given, because at no point did he mention ETs, at no point did he mention off-world activities that could be part of what is contributing to this. In other words, he at no point gives any indication that all of this knowledge that history and everything that he gives particularly the last 50, 60 years, he's talking about agents on behalf of who he doesn't talk about. So that part is a key part that's missing. So from that, I feel that the scanning process is at a energetic frequency level. And the potency is not the potency of the mind that they look out for. It's the potency of the being at an energetic level, which they have an understanding that we don't. And it seems to be able to detect frequencies. And if that frequency is detected, it's detecting potential at an energetic level that must be removed, right? And
or protected.
And the way or protected. But
so you've
when
really,
it came to Jack Cruz,
you've really been paying attention on the Talamanca review. Because we are energetically monitored all the time.
Absolutely, because
like the UFO above my house after a 12-week fast and meditation and writing retreat in a cabin in the woods. Why then? Because I mean, I could get into some stuff that goes on this mountain, but it's better I don't talk about it. And by the way, folks, there are things I don't talk about. There are things I know I don't talk about. And there's a reason I don't talk about them. And the reason is you're not allowed. And this is a rules-based game. And you got to play by the rules.
Yeah, but just think of what you said. And this is the hard part, unless you know someone personally, that you don't make excuses for them by saying Jack Cruz didn't talk about those things because he's smart enough to know that he can't talk about them, or is he an agent? So when you have to know the person personally. So having had a lot of, sort of personal relationships with people who were part of relationships, very close relation with Jack, or in what he calls his inner sixth circle, you can, through having a relationship with them, get to understand the commonality of their view of the relationship with someone else. And the common thing was arrogance. Jack is an arrogant bastard. He can be a real bastard, at a personal level. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm done with Jack. And it's like, hang on, where's the love? How does it express? And the common thing was at a personal level, when you know some of the personal story, go, everyone's working through their trauma, right?
Yeah.
But when you've got a big, big mind, you can, it kind of acts as a cover for trauma sometimes.
Yeah.
And it allows a person to basically feel that they're helping and being effective, which they are at a mind level, at an information level. But at an energetic level, unless the person that's doing all the broadcasting knows that they've got work to do at another layer, or the person listening doesn't understand that it's not just about the information, they got their own personal work to do, it can be hijacked. And that's what those that manage the energetic frequency layer know. So it's not about the information, it's about the frequency, it's about the energy. And even when I was listening to Jack, I was thinking back to your chapter on the devil, in The Devil in Us. It's brilliant because it perfectly explains the relationship between us as a mixture of light and darkness and the role of darkness.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can listen to Jack and take a different perspective and go, brilliant agent for the demon.
Yeah.
Because he's really creating this mirror, right?
Yeah.
And those that understand that can face it and process it.
Yeah.
Those that can't judge him. But there could be other reasons for not accepting it because they see the frequency of Jack and go, the information's good, but I don't want to interact with that frequency. So it gets very complicated. But what I'm trying to say is that the basis of it, if you don't understand that concept that you present, and particularly in that chapter of the devil, you're missing a very, very key point here.
Yeah.
That's of the dynamic that's going on now.
Yeah.
And I could read that, and I've only read it once. I've got to read it and read it and read it. To hold that, because we've been so deeply programmed and traumatized by the concept of darkness that it gets in the way. It gets in the way of us being able to face it.
Yeah.
And it's cultural, religious programs. And we immediately, and that's why a lot of these podcasters are tiptoeing around darkness.
Yeah.
But if they're not careful, they become agents for darkness.
Yes.
Rather
you
than
really
light.
Got it. You make me feel as though writing that book was worthwhile. I wonder sometimes.
Oh man, that chapter.
Which
Chapter
chapter
on the devil.
Chapter 4, yeah.
Yeah, because it is not talked about. It's not articulated.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything that articulates it that way. And it is so, that one I just sent you about, they're talking about the Zionists from A to Z, from abortion to Zionism.
Yeah.
Now, they get it, but again, they're coming from the mind and they're coming from a cultural position or religious position, which totally misses the point of light and darkness, which gives those that understand this the upper hand. So from that perspective, I agree with your thesis that until the third temple is built and it's totally exposed, it cannot be understood.
This is why I'm in favor of it. It's, look, the patient's dying in the ambulance. You may as well try the electroconvulsive therapy, right? And that's what the third temple is at this point. So, and then all the stuff that is going on to keep this charade alive and the same power structure in place, it's all done in the dark channels because they know that the humanity can't vibrate at that dark channel, right? And so, but if you get used to darkness, what happens is you learn to see in the dark. And let me tell you,
Yeah,
Santo, that's where all the esoteric truths are. As Bob says, God hid all his
yeah,
secrets in the darkness. Okay?
yeah,
and
yeah,
and so
yeah.
you
But
gotta go in,
it's
you gotta go into that darkness. And I do not for the life of me understand how Christianity evolved the way it did. It's ridiculous. I mean, what do they think Christ is trying to teach in the 40 days in the desert? It's confront your darkness, confront your
yeah,
Satan, confront your devil, right?
yeah.
Integrate it. Integrate it.
And but people there are those that do it in a almost inverted ways. He is have the light in the dark, and let's put it on the table. And
Yeah.
it's just an inverted version. And the best one to show that, what's his name? Peterson from Canada,
Jordan Peterson.
uh, you know, Jordan Peterson. The interview of Piers Morgan with Jordan Peterson is brilliant for exposing that because he's already prepared Piers Morgan the emotional kind of coattails that he's going to pull of the story of Jordan and his relationship with his father, all the emotions. In other words, Jordan starts crying, it's just trauma on display being used for clicks by both of them
Yeah.
without resolving nothing, without
Yeah.
resolving anything. But it's quite interesting to see how someone like Jordan Peterson could be at the forefront of seeing through the mind something that was coming. And he was right at the cutting edge of the transhumanist agenda, seeing it right at the beginning, yet become an agent for the dark. How does it happen? Trauma,
he
because he was completely traumatized from the beginning, never dealt with that. It got worse. You look at the trauma that he went through, his family, his daughter, and on it goes. He's a perfect candidate.
Yeah.
They've got him. They don't need to bribe him. They don't need to get him to have sex with some prostitute. He's already damaged goods,
Yeah.
right? Dress him up as a clown, right? By the way, do you like the clown I'm going to give you for Christmas?
Yeah, that was quite something. Thank you for that. Yeah. Free hugs. Um, and this of course was the gift that Bob gave me, and it was the gift that Kiahi gave Bob, the Kahuna. Is that I don't think there are teachings more required on the planet now than the dark teachings, and the war and the bloodshed and all the chaos we go through. Those are the dark teachings, and but people never get them. They always, they can go through an entire experience like a war and not get the dark teachings. Now, a lot of the vets do. This is very interesting that a lot of the vets wake up to the value of darkness, like Sean Ryan, the Vigilant Elite podcast, the Sean Ryan podcast, a lot of the Navy SEALs, a lot of the combat veterans. They need a special kind of teaching. I'm wondering if maybe one day I might not offer that up here, bring highly traumatized people here and see what kind of work I can do with them in 6 weeks.
That's a really good point because one thing that surprised me when I first, you read The Light of Darkness and you get to understand a bit of the background of Bob. And then I don't know where I heard him say it or you mentioned it, but I heard he didn't believe in meditating.
No,
And I'm like,
he
that's weird.
changed
That's
his
weird,
he changed
right?
his mind. Well,
I know.
Bob didn't need to meditate, but and to be honest, a lot of the meditation, like Vipsana and stuff, the beginner stuff, it's really boring. If you're already fully lit
Yes.
up psychically and you can travel to other dimensions and talk to beings and extraterrestrials and demons and angels and Jesus, Bob's met Jesus a number of times. What do you need to meditate for? Well, he changed his mind the first time he came up here, and I taught
Yeah.
him. I taught him how to meditate. I taught him mantra, and he had a tall white Draco on him, and it got attached to him after the
Yeah.
plane. Nobody has runs taken at them more than Bob Wiegand, And I think it has to
Yeah.
do with his genetic line, the pure Lyrian line coming from the German root race. Um, but he gets attacked all the time, and he takes all comers. But he had
Yeah.
never been taught a technique where you could just avoid the conflict, like vibrate it out of
Yeah.
existence. And he was like, I didn't even know you could do this. Yeah, you can always do this. He says, have you been doing this your whole life, Bruce? I said, yeah. Yeah, unless I really want to punch someone in the nose, then I just punch them in the nose. But generally, I just vibrate away all conflicts. But we were able to push off a tall white Draco, which if you talk to any healer, any psychic, any medium, any channeler, and I'm sure your guy Steve in holographic kinetics would agree, that is about the nastiest thing you can run into on the astral is a tall white Draco. They're very, very
Yeah.
psychically powerful, and are, to be honest with you, are fooling a lot of religions into believing they're God right now. That's how powerful they are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we were able to push one off, and
Yeah.
you know, and then I also live in a very magical place that's teeming with interdimensional life. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
the stuff like the thing, like the grandkids come up and the door closes and locks by itself, and then that creepy little plastic Smurf doll moves across the room by itself. And
Yeah.
and the kid, you can't fool kids. Are you sure it was on the bed? Yes, abuelo. Yes, it
Yeah.
was on the bed.
No.
And I'm going, nobody moved it?
Yeah.
No, no. And
Yes.
that's
But
just the duende playing, right? The elves up
yeah.
here, and they love to play with kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But see, that's the thing is, um, that extreme example, I think, is very relevant, where somebody can have the genetics, can have the experiences, but if they are not able to consciously be balanced, peaceful within themselves, connected directly, then everything else can be an interference as much as it can be beneficial as an experience.
yeah,
And we're all at different levels of that because we've all got, I don't think there's anyone that doesn't have either an internally created program, internally created entity, or externally created entity, or even haunted to some degree. And they can only be removed by introspection within.
yeah,
And that's a big, big experience like for me, it was when I was barely a teenager, wanting all the answers in the books, reading all the books, and one day just going, how do the people in the Amazon jungle stare at the stars and get connected? They don't read.
yeah,
What's going on?
yeah.
So you suddenly go, I need to do something other than read books,
We're
right?
not
And
so.
that was my gateway into meditation.
Yeah,
And you cannot explain that.
no,
It's a personal experience. And of
yeah,
course, you go through the hijack versions, the course to meditate, the one that's taken you down the wrong path. But, you get through it, until you connect with yourself. But like you say, the ecosystem is very important. We live on a mountain. Whenever we go into the entity infested, dense, soupy city, you can feel the
what
entities and all the rest.
what city
And
is
but
that
you
again
don't.
that you and Jackie go into? Queensland?
Uh, Brisbane, the capital of the state of Queensland. So that should give you a hint of where the
Yeah,
entities come from.
yeah,
So it's quite an experience to have the difference between being prepared versus not. And it's exactly what you said. The difference between wanting to punch the person in the face or dissipate it is up to you and the amount of work you've done on yourself.
yeah,
And if you haven't, you're going to punch somebody in the face, metaphorically, and that will create yet another program
yeah.
that you have to then deal with.
So
So how
Santo,
many programs?
you
Yeah,
you alluded to something but never finished your thought. Does
which
Jack
one?
Cruz know about the fourth dimensional beings, the non-Terran beings, the extraterrestrials?
No. Well, no. He has a mind program because with a very, very intelligent mind like that, and he's got a very healthy ego. What I'd like to see is Jack Cruz and Cliff High together, because at a personality level, they're like two pit bulls, right? So you'd have to make
Well,
sure
that's
that there was
that's a pretty
a
bold.
fence between.
It's a pretty bold statement to make to a guy who's owned 4 pit bulls in the last 8 years. But yeah,
Believe
they
me,
are.
they'll be
They're
pit
they're
bulls. You'd
they're
have to
like pit bulls. Then they're great
you'd have to put a
dogs.
fence between them,
Yeah,
and you'd have to make sure a punch couldn't go through that fence.
yeah,
But you would get that answer because Cliff is so in an unbalanced way driven by the agenda of the ET agenda in an intelligent way, to the point that if you read his recent blogs, it's how to build a UFO in your backyard and then how to fly it, right? So it is
is
he's he's getting prepared, let's say, right?
yeah,
Uh, so he's got that side of the story in an unbalanced way, but it is got merit. A
yeah,
lot of what he says has merit, but it's like this puzzle. You can't just work on one part. You'll never complete it.
yeah,
That's why Jack has got one side very well put together, but he's frustrated
yeah,
because his puzzles are not coming together. Well, have the humility, Jack, have the humility, Cliff, to listen to someone who's got a piece of the puzzle that it's not your skill or expertise to put together. You just have to have the humility to work with them,
yeah,
work together and bring those two pieces together, and the puzzle starts to come together. If
yeah,
we can't do that, you're absolutely right. Free will be destroyed. Creator, whatever people's version of that is, will have to intervene because it's such a shit show
yeah,
that it does not represent anything like a free will universe. It's no longer a free will universe. It's
yeah,
just, in other words, if this is then it ain't working,
yeah,
right? At that point. So you either redefine what Central Station's purpose is, a whole shithole, and create a resolution centre somewhere else for free will beings,
yeah.
and we all go there. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, there's so much to learn in the dynamic tension between the negative and the positive in this world. And I don't, and that's why you should. Another reason you shouldn't be afraid of the negative, because it is an incredible teacher. Like, I mean, Bob and Kiahi aren't joking when they say God put all his secrets in the darkness. So you have to go into the darkness, right? And this does not mean you're a dark person. You can carry your love into
Yeah,
the
but the dark.
darkness.
Yeah, but the darkness. When people hear that, they think they need to go to some esoteric reference or to go to some satanic ritual. No, it could be you. It could be your kid. It could be your auntie, your uncle that has this unresolved issue with you and you with them. And it's a dark issue.
Yeah,
And that's the pathway. We tend to look in places that give our egos more validation that it'll resolve it. It's like a person going, well, I need to get married. I need to get married. I'm getting old, getting past my use by date. Oh, have you seen that psychic? They're really good. And they go, you will meet 6 foot tall, brown eyes, perfect. How is that not going to influence their decision? The first 6 foot guy that comes across and goes, you look, hey, you want a coffee? I found him. No,
yeah.
it's like,
Eureka.
what's wrong with us that we can't take responsibility for us?
Well, it's the way we're raised.
And exactly, the
This is
indoctrination
this is
camps.
this is the danger of over institutionalization and the paternal state, right? I mean, this is the danger of it, and all of it leading to UBI, digital ID, chips in the brain, and well, you couldn't govern yourself. So now you are the property of the state, and you're a good human being now because we
yeah,
made you a good human being, not by spiritually unfolding you, but by digitally shutting you down and controlling your behavior. And
yeah.
it's as
That,
dark as it gets.
yeah. Actually, an interesting experience on the weekend. We popped in and visited my son, and smart dude. He, but very in that world. Works for Oracle, very technical, but really trying to be responsible in terms of how to live. And he obviously goes, "Hey, you see Bitcoin? Oh, have you got your Bitcoins?" And I'm like, "Well, no, I don't, And I said, "Well, that's good. If it helps you put a deposit on a house or whatever you're trying to do, go for it." But he made a very interesting point. He says, "You do understand that the whole foundation of Bitcoin and the blockchain, particularly Bitcoin, is there is no trust." And it's true, it's an untrusted system. In other words, there is nothing in the system that says you can trust anything other than the blockchain itself.
Yeah,
And it's like, wow, wow. In other
but
words, what it's actually saying is human beings are not trustworthy. Well, that removes responsibility from everyone.
yeah,
It's ridiculous.
but
In a way,
there's
sorry, in a way, banks are not trustworthy.
oh, they're not,
Oh, sorry.
but we couldn't admit that until we had an alternative, which Bitcoin appears to be. But there's a profound weakness in the system. Profound weakness.
Yeah.
Have you figured out what it is?
Well, there's always a back door. There's always a
No,
back door to the system, but
it's it's electricity.
yeah,
So for the first time, so an EMP could shut down all transactions. Like a well-placed electromagnetic pulse in New York City, if it was entirely operating on cryptocurrencies, could shut down all transactional ability. It could literally
hey, but
dissipate wealth too, if that stuff's
yeah,
not
but
held anywhere. Plus, the enormous amount of energy required to keep mining and sustain the Bitcoin system is mind-boggling. The cryptocurrency system, like it's not free.
no, no, but Bruce, yield little faith. Yield little faith. Carrie Cassidy's got it covered. She knows that there is cryptocurrencies off planet. They're doing it off planet, you know. And this is the level of stupidity that has been barked around the place on these alternate media. They go, not only is Bitcoin going to save humanity, it's out there. Just like people go, when you say to someone, "Where's your information?" They go, "It's in the cloud. It's like it's in heaven,
Yeah,
and it'll come down from the heavens to my computer." It's God given.
yeah,
We've been dumbed down and programmed to a level that you have to say, what does it mean to be human? What is freedom? And what is responsibility? Because
yeah.
all of them have been eroded at an exponential rate. Hence the transhumanist agenda, because you do need to remove humanity, freedoms, and responsibility in order to effectively create the zombie nations.
Agreed.
And it's happening.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know how we're going to get out of this now, but because the interconnectivity is reaching a point now where the only point of turning or change is complete collapse. The level of interdependence now. And so I say, look, take note of anyone advocating institutions as the bedrock of civilization. And this is a Jewish talking point as well. Institutions, institution. And there's a reason Jews talk about institutions. Because institutions are really the forerunner of the complete interdependence, which will make escape impossible unless you can live as a native, unless you can truly live off of land. Then you're going to be trapped in this system, and there's going to be no way out. And I mean, those of us who come from the first world, we already know how bad it is. And I think of the first world nations, no two nations understand how bad it can get more than Australia and Canada. We seem to be the test cases in the Commonwealth, in the Five Eyes countries. Well, let's see how far we can push it in Canada. Let's see how far we can push it in Australia. And these are test cases. They're petri dishes. They're lab experiments. And I don't know about Australia, but at a consciousness level, Canada's almost surrendered now. It's almost
Well,
the willing slave, right? It's really really sad to see what's become of Canada, and the level of arrogance amongst the institutional supporters is mind-boggling. And there's no real
yeah, but
opposition. We don't have a Trump type figure. The opposition party is not really that nice a guy, and there just seems to be no way out of the darkness we're going into now, except fully extract yourself and try to live separated
yeah,
from it, right?
yeah. But interestingly, just a few days ago, they'd introduced this bill in the Parliament here in Australia called the Information and Disinformation Bill. And it would have been essentially the removal of free speech, right? And fortunately, it was shut down, right? So they'd have to really push it hard now with the risk of a double dissolution if they try to reintroduce it. Now, you'd say that's a small win, but then, are you familiar with Rebel News? That complete Zionist sellout
Yeah, it was
media.
begun by a Canadian Jew named Ezra Levant, but they have offices in Australia, the United States, and Britain now.
Yeah. And Avi Yemeni, who's the Australian rep, who was a big voice during that Rona period for freedoms and all the rest of it, out the front with the microphone. When this misinformation, disinformation bill was rejected, it's plastered all over his Twitter account everywhere. We did it. You got to have free. He's the biggest Zionist of them all. So, how do you stitch together through a mind that can't interpret and see through the layers that he's talking shit?
Yeah,
It's so difficult because people go, yay, even Rebel News is behind it. We got freedom. We can say what we want. But the more sinister one they want to introduce into Australia is to protect children under 16 from the dire information that's misinformation on the internet. So you'll need to prove that you are over 16 to be able to use the internet for certain things. How is that not a digital ID?
yeah,
And you want to hear these talking buffoons in Parliament trying to say, "Oh no, we just want to protect it." How? How are you going to prove it? It's just beyond stupid, right? Because they know, or they're too stupid to know what the real motivation for the footstep tiptoe strategy is to complete digital ID, right?
yeah,
Whether it's CBDCs, digital ID, it's all part of it. And actually, Jack did a really good job in terms of explaining that part of it. It's really worth it just for that, the CBDC crypto connections, and how the wars, everything is driven by money under the current Federal Reserve system.
yeah,
But if you don't change the frequency, which he didn't explain, you recreate wars under a digital system. So what's the difference?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's good for today, Santo. It's been a great chat. We're up around 50
Oh,
minutes now, and I think we got a lot covered. Well, before we end, let me just ask: is there anything else on your mind? Any
yeah.
comments you want to make about? I don't know.
I
anything, recent Talamanca
I just
reviews that you
want to
enjoyed
feel
or
good.
anything?
Uh,
You
the
could
only thing I
you could sing
noticed
you could
was,
sing the praises of the Blue Yeti microphone if you wanted. Behold, Santo, behold
well,
the
would,
slightly
I,
the
I would, but there were a
slightly
few.
phallic connotation here. Slightly phallic.
Yes, it does serve a purpose. But what I would note is that I was, for the last probably 3 or 4 episodes, trying to figure out whether it was the cold that Bruce had that was kind of slowing him down a bit and putting him into a slightly different frame of mind.
Yeah.
Was it the information or was it just the state of the globe?
Well,
And you
that
never really
and
clarified it.
well, it was everything plus incessant rain for 6 weeks now. This is the most intense rain season I've lived through in Costa Rica. Like it's
I've got the,
nonstop, man, nonstop.
I got the answer then. You need to talk to Jack Cruz. You are becoming leptin resistant. You need to either get some Therabol red light therapy happening straight away because you are becoming like what the Swedes call melancholy. But I kept telling them they were just depressed because they weren't seeing enough of the sun. So I
Well,
think you need to move to somewhere
this
where the sun shines.
the sun comes through the clouds. Like you still get sunlight on a cloudy day. You know, it's a big myth that the sun goes away when the clouds are out there. But you know, the sun doesn't really go away except for the Arctic Circle, and Arctic and Antarctic for 6 months every year, which must be brutal.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but yeah, no,
Well,
it's
let me do a little bit of AB kind of delving into. Yes, the dopamine levels are dropping, Bruce. Eat more of those red hot peppers, and you'll feel elated.
red hot peppers. It is. Santo, thanks for joining me today. We'll talk to you soon. Okay. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There was Santo, and that's the show for today. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.